I spent 31 years as a social worker. I have sat across from women with bruised eyes and trembling hands. I have held the hands of children who learned too early that home was not always safe. I have filed reports, made referrals, testified in courtrooms, and driven women to shelters in the middle of the night with nothing but a garbage bag of clothes and a child on their hip. I thought I had seen everything. I was wrong, because none of that prepared me for the afternoon. I sat in my own kitchen, watching my daughter laugh at something her husband said, and felt a coldness move through me that I had not felt since the worst cases of my career. My name is not important. What I am is a mother, and what I am about to tell you is the truth. My daughter, I will call her my daughter, because that is what she is. That is everything she is to me. She was the kind of person who lit up a room without trying, not in a loud way, in the way that good bread smells when it comes out of the oven. Quietly, warmly. You just felt better being near her. She taught 3rd grade for 9 years. She coached a little girls' soccer team on Saturday mornings. She remembered every birthday in our family, every anniversary, every small thing that mattered to everyone else. She met her husband at a conference. He was in finance. He had a firm handshake and a clean smile, and he quoted her a poem on their second date, not to show off, she told me, but because it genuinely fit the moment. She called me that night. I could hear the smile in her voice before she said a single word. "Mom," she said, "I think this one is different." I believed her. I had no reason not to. They dated for 2 years. He came to Thanksgiving. He helped my late husband's brother fix a gutter on the house without being asked. He called me ma'am until I told him to stop, and then he called me by my first name with such warmth that it never felt presumptuous. He asked my daughter about her students by name. He remembered that she hated cilantro. He showed up. They got married on a Saturday in October. The leaves were orange and gold. My daughter wore her grandmother's earrings. I cried 3 times before the ceremony even started. I am telling you all of this because I need you to understand. There was nothing to see. There was nothing that looked wrong, and that, I would come to learn, was exactly the point. The first time I noticed something, I told myself I was imagining it. It was about 8 months after the wedding. My daughter and I had a standing phone call every Sunday evening, something we had done since she moved out for college, something that had never broken even through moves and new jobs and grief. That Sunday, she called 40 minutes late. She sounded slightly out of breath, slightly distracted. She apologized 3 times in the first 2 minutes. I asked her if everything was all right. She said yes. She said she had lost track of time. I said okay. I said I loved her. We talked for 20 minutes and she laughed in all the right places, but something was slightly off in the rhythm of it. Like a clock that keeps correct time but makes a sound it didn't used to make. I told myself, she is a newlywed. She is building a life. Sunday calls shift. This is normal. 2 months later, she canceled our standing Christmas Eve tradition, the one where she came to my house, just the 2 of us, and we made my mother's coconut cake recipe and watched old movies until midnight. She said her husband's family was having something. She said she was sorry. She said it quickly, like she was reading from a note. I said, of course. I said we would reschedule. We did not reschedule. I noticed the way she started prefacing things. She used to call me and simply say what she thought. Now there was always a small hesitation, a qualifier. He thinks, she would say. Or, we decided. Or the one that started showing up more and more, I probably shouldn't say anything, but... And then she would stop herself. Catch something. Move on. I am a social worker. I know what it looks like when someone is editing themselves in real time. But she was my daughter, and the mind protects itself, and I found reasons. She had married someone with strong opinions. That was an adjustment. She was a people pleaser by nature. She was finding her footing. Marriage was a negotiation. I had been married for 34 years. I knew it was not always easy. I found reasons. I kept finding them. Until the spring. Until the dinner. My daughter called me on a Wednesday and invited me to dinner at their house for the upcoming Saturday. She said her husband wanted to cook. She said it in a particular way, careful, almost rehearsed, and I said yes, and I brought flowers, and I stood on their front porch with yellow tulips and the particular hope that mothers carry when they want very badly to be wrong about something. The house was beautiful. It always was, perfectly arranged, everything in its place. She used to leave shoes by the door and stacks of unread library books on the coffee table. Now everything was aligned, symmetrical. It looked like a magazine photograph of a home rather than a home. Her husband greeted me at the door. He was charming. He always was. He took the flowers and said they were beautiful and went to find a vase. My daughter hugged me in the hallway, and I felt, for just a moment, the way her shoulders relaxed, the way a person breathes differently when they are finally allowed to exhale. I held her a second longer than usual. We sat down to dinner. He had made lamb. It was very good. We talked about his work, about local politics, about a home renovation they were considering. He was articulate and funny and generous with the conversation. I watched my daughter. She smiled. She laughed. She passed the bread. She did not finish a single sentence on her own. Every time she began to speak, every single time he would pick up the thread before she reached the end of it. Sometimes he corrected the detail. Sometimes he redirected the story. Once, she started telling me something funny that had happened with one of her students, and he said, gently, easily, without missing a beat, "That's not quite how it happened, sweetheart." And she stopped. And she nodded. And she didn't finish the story. She just stopped, mid-sentence, and nodded. 31 years of cases. I have a particular stillness I go to when I see something that requires my full attention without alarm. I went there. I picked up my fork. I asked him a question about the renovation. I kept my face completely open. But inside, something had shifted, something that did not shift back. After dinner, he took a phone call in his office. My daughter and I stood in the kitchen. She was washing a pan. I was drying. And in the particular quiet of two people who have known each other their whole lives, I said nothing for a moment. I let the silence be comfortable. I let it breathe. Then I said, "How are you, really?" She kept washing the pan. "I'm good, Mom." "Okay," I said. She scrubbed a spot that was already clean. "He gets anxious," she said finally. When the story's not accurate, he just likes things to be accurate." "That's understandable," I said. She nodded. She didn't look at me. "It's just how he is," she said. "I'm learning." I dried the pan. I said I understood. I hugged her at the door when I left, and I drove home, and I sat in my car in my driveway for a long time before I went inside. I did not sleep well that night. I started paying attention differently after that. Not intrusively. I did not push or probe or alarm her. I know enough about this to know that pushing too hard too soon closes doors. So I paid attention from where I stood. I called a little more often, casually, briefly. I noticed what she talked about and what she never talked about anymore. She used to tell me everything about her students, their names, their little personalities, the ones who were struggling, the ones who surprised her. That stopped. Work became a single word. Fine. Good. Busy. She stopped mentioning her friends. She had a close group of women she'd known since college. I realized one evening that I had not heard any of their names in months. When I asked, she said they were all just busy. Life got complicated. People drifted. People do drift, but not all at once. Not all in the same direction. She lost weight that didn't need losing. She started wearing her hair differently, pulled back, restrained. She had always worn it natural and full. Small thing. The kind of thing only a mother notices. Her laugh changed, not in quality, but in frequency and in what triggered it. She used to laugh easily, at small things, at herself. Now she laughed when he said something, when he set the tone. The laugh followed his lead like it was waiting for permission. I have spent a career learning the language of this, the slow erasure, the way a person disappears by degrees, so gradually that they don't even notice they are going. The way the person who loves them learns to stop noticing too, because the alternative, the acknowledgement, is too heavy to carry. I was not going to stop noticing. That summer, I asked my daughter to meet me for lunch, just the two of us. I chose a restaurant near her school, somewhere comfortable and familiar, somewhere she associated with herself before. She arrived 8 minutes late and texted me twice to apologize during those 8 minutes. When she sat down, she looked at her phone once, quickly, and then turned it face down on the table. We ordered, we talked, and then I did something I had been preparing to do. I told her about a woman I had worked with, a real case, anonymized as I always did, a woman who had been a lawyer, brilliant, confident, a woman who, over the course of 4 years inside a particular marriage, had been so carefully and systematically diminished that by the time she found her way to my office, she could not make a decision about what to order at a restaurant without calling her husband first. I told the story plainly and professionally, the way I would have told it to a colleague, and I watched my daughter's face. She was very still. "What happened to her?" my daughter asked. "She's all right now," I said. "It took time, but she's all right." My daughter picked up her water glass, put it down. "Was it hard to leave?" "The hardest part," I said, "was that she kept thinking she was the problem. She was so convinced that if she could just be a little better, a little quieter, a little more patient, things would balance out. She kept waiting for the version of him she had fallen in love with to come back." My daughter was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, "Did it ever come back?" I met her eyes. "No, sweetheart. It was never there." She excused herself to go to the restroom. She was in there for a while. When she came back, her eyes were slightly red, and she smiled at me and said, "The food was good, didn't I think?" And I said yes. I said it was very good. I paid the bill. I drove home. And then I did what I had been considering for months. I called my daughter's oldest friend, the one she had known since freshman year of college. I called her and I explained carefully that I was not asking her to intervene or to do anything that might alarm my daughter or put her in a difficult position. I was asking her to simply be there, to make contact, to not let the friendship go quiet just because it had been made to be inconvenient. "She's been pulling away," her friend said. She didn't sound surprised. She sounded like someone who had been waiting for this conversation. "I've been worried." "So have I said. "I tried." "He always seemed to be." "I know," I said. "Keep trying." I called my daughter's department head at her school, a woman I had met at a function 2 years prior, someone whose judgment I respected. I didn't tell her everything. I told her enough. I asked her to make sure my daughter knew she was valued, to say it explicitly, out loud, because people who are being carefully diminished at home Stop believing the good things that exist outside of it. She said she understood. She said she had noticed my daughter seemed different this year. I said, "Please tell her she's doing good work. Say it directly, say it often." And then I waited. Because this part requires patience. Pushing too hard, too fast, can make the person inside the situation defend the situation. I had seen it 100 times. The intervention that backfires because it arrives before the person is ready, before they can see their own reflection clearly enough to recognize that it's changed. I waited. I called on Sundays. I kept the calls easy. I sent a card on no occasion in particular that said only, "I am proud of you every day. I love you completely. I am here." I sent it to her school so she would get it alone. Autumn arrived. In October, the same month she had gotten married, the month with the orange and gold leaves, my daughter called me on a Tuesday evening. She called at a time she never called. She was very calm. The particular calm of someone who has made a decision and is on the other side of the fear of it. "Mom," she said, "I need your help." I had been ready for this sentence for months. I said, "I know. Tell me what you need." She talked for a long time. I listened. She told me things I had suspected and things I hadn't known, and some things that made me grip the phone a little harder, though I kept my voice exactly the same. Steady, present, I was not going to be so overcome by what she was telling me that she would spend her energy managing my reaction instead of her own truth. When she finished, she said, "I'm scared." I said, "I know. That's okay. Being scared and being ready are not opposites." We made a plan that night, step by step. She came to me the following Saturday while he was at a work function. We sat at my kitchen table and went through things calmly and methodically. I had already called a friend of mine who worked in family law. I had numbers. I had options laid out like tools on a workbench. Her job was not to know everything at once. Her job was to take the first step. She took it. The process was not fast. These things never are. There were moments she doubted herself. There was a week she went back. There was a night she called me at 2 in the morning and said she didn't know who she was anymore, and I said, "I do. And I have been waiting for you to find your way back to her." I will tell you this. The court process was complicated. The documentation mattered enormously. She had kept messages not because she had a plan, but because some part of her had known. She had screenshots going back 14 months, emails, a voice message that said things that no person should ever say to someone they claim to love. It took 11 months from that October phone call. When it was done, when the last document was signed, my daughter sat in my kitchen and cried in a way she hadn't cried through the whole process. The kind of crying that is not about sadness, but about release, about the pressure of a very long-held breath finally being let go. She went back to teaching. She called her friends. She called them one by one and said, "I am sorry I disappeared," and every one of them said, "You don't have to apologize," and they meant it. Her friend, the one I had called, took her to dinner, and they talked until the restaurant closed. She started wearing her hair the way she always had, big and natural and entirely her own. She came to my house on a Sunday evening, and we made my mother's coconut cake, the one we had not made together in 3 years. She got flour on her sleeve and laughed at herself. That laugh, her real laugh, the one that didn't wait for anyone's permission. I stood at my kitchen counter, and I looked at my daughter, and I thought, there she is. There she is. I want to say something to you before I go, because if you have watched this far, there is a reason. Abuse is not always a raised hand. Sometimes it is a raised eyebrow, a correction in front of company, a story you are no longer allowed to finish, a friendship that becomes inconvenient, a laugh that slowly learns to wait. And if you are a mother, or a father, or a sister, or a friend, and you are watching someone you love disappear by degrees. I want you to know, your instinct is a tool. Use it, not as a weapon, not as a confrontation, but as a compass. You stay close. You stay consistent. You say, I see you. I am here. And then you wait for the moment they are ready. And when that moment comes, you have already prepared the ground. My daughter is all right. More than all right. She is herself again. That is the whole story. That is everything. What part of this stayed with you? Tell me in the comments. And tell me, what city are you watching from? You are not alone, wherever you are.